Welcome to Fun with Annuities with your host, me, Stan the Annuity Man, America's annuity agent. Can annuities be fun? Can contractual guarantees be fun? Absolutely they can. Find out the brutal facts about annuities with no sales pitches or high-pressure nonsense. Just the brutal and factual annuity truth, which is all you need to hear. Let's have some fun with annuities, and let's have that fun start right now. Welcome to Fun with Annuities. I'm your host, Stan, the Annuity Man, America's annuity agent. I want to welcome everyone on the podcast platforms, all of those things that I can't remember, but there's a bunch of them. And also the Fun with Annuities YouTube channel, so you can see the dashingly good looks of my guest and what color baseball cap I have on, which is always good. Want to welcome back a person that I have so much respect for. And if there's two people on the planet that like QLACs more than me and this person, I want to meet them. In fact, he has a QLAC hat typically that he wears. He wore it on the last podcast. But I want to welcome back to Fun with Annuities, Michael Finke. Michael!
Great to be back on, Stan. Good to see you again.
It's good to see you as well. You know, I follow you. I stalk you and everything that you write out there. So there's been a couple of articles that have popped up, and I'm going, man, I got to get him back on and talk about that. And the first one, and I'm just... By the way, you can go to my site at theannuityman.com and read about how wonderful Michael is and all the accomplishments. It's ridiculous. He's done so much. At his funeral, whoever gets up to talk about what he's done, it's going to be a long one because he is really accomplished, and we're so happy to have him on. Michael, you did an article for Think Advisor magazine, and the title was Why Claiming Social Security at 64 or 67 could be a big mistake. Now, Social Security should be handled and advised by experts like you, and it drives me crazy when the indexed annuity salespeople have a Social Security seminar, and then, oh, by the way, you need an indexed annuity. I'm so happy for you to be on and hammer home factually why this could be a mistake. So I throw the ball to you, Michael Finke.
Well, first of all, Social Security is an annuity. Anybody who says that they hate annuities should also say that they hate Social Security and pensions, because they're both a form of annuity. And it just so happens that Social Security is provided by the federal government to everybody. It's not priced based on market prices, which is important to note. And I also, in my article, break down how to value the income you get from the annuity. And I think that's very important because it's the same way we value a private annuity. So when you buy a lifetime annuity from an insurance company, there's a way to price it. There are actuaries at the company who look at mortality tables, and they look at the rates of return they can get from bond investments. They have to be funded with the safe investments if they're going to guarantee the income. And you can use the same way to value the income that you're receiving from Social Security when you delay by a year. So essentially what you're doing when you delay receiving Social Security is you are buying more of a government-provided inflation-protected annuity. And inflation-protected annuities take away two sources of risk. They take away longevity risk, which a traditional annuity does, and also reduces inflation risk. Now, this is, I think, very important for retirees to provide a foundation of inflation-protected income. And when you give up a year, and the example I gave in the article is, let's say that you were born in 1960. You're 62 years old in 2022, and you're trying to decide whether to delay Social Security to age 63. You may give up $20,000 of income during your 62nd year, but starting at your 63rd year, you now get 5% more, $1,000 more in lifetime income. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot. You give up $20,000, you get $1,000 more every year for the rest of your life. But there's a couple things to consider. First of all, how long are you going to live? If you're a healthy woman, for example, on average, you're going to live you have a 50-50 chance of living to age 90. And that means you're going to be getting those $1,000 payments for the next 27 years. And they're also inflation protected. So they're more valuable than just getting an extra $1,000 a year. You're getting the inflation adjustment was 7% this year. So you might get $1,070 this next year. So it continues to go up every year in retirement. So it's very valuable and often underappreciated by retirees. And you and I see so much garbage when it comes to deciding whether or not to delay claiming Social Security. There is this sort of anti-government bent, that
Right.
I'm going to take my money right now, and the reality is that if you're a taxpayer, you want everybody to take their money right now, because you're a loser. You will get less over the course of your lifetime. It's essentially as if you're giving up lifetime wealth.
Is that a figurative loser or a literal loser, Michael?
Well, it is a literal loser. So in the sense that both, in the sense that you lose wealth, and this is absolutely, you can plot out the mathematics of it, and it's not rocket science that over the course of your expected lifetime, you will have less money to work with. And even if your goal is to give your money to your kids, then it's worth giving up 1 year of income in order to get a higher income for the rest of your life on average. Now, a big assumption here is that you have to be in okay health. If you're not in good health, if you have been diagnosed with cancer, or if you have heart disease, or whatever reason you don't expect to live as long as the average American, then it can make sense to claim early, unless you have a spouse who can then continue to receive your benefit. So if you're in bad health, absolutely, if you have a high income, especially if you're a higher earner than your spouse, delay claiming as long as you can to age 70. And maybe your lifetime is not going to be as long as the average American, but that payment is going to support your surviving spouse for the rest of their life. So I think it's Stan, what are some of the things that you've heard from people who don't want to delay claiming Social Security?
Well, I think we all know that there are people that have to take it early because they don't have any other source of income. And under that assumption, then yeah, take it. But if you are weighing, should I take it now? Or if some non-qualified advisor agent is trying to combine the decision with an indexed annuity sale or something like that, what I would tell you to do is certainly reach out to a CPA, tax lawyer, or listen to someone like Michael Finke. We also have a person on occasionally named Jeff Miller, who has a site called socialsecuritychoices.com, ex-University of Delaware professor. Smart people to weigh in. I think that there's just so much misinformation on Social Security, which is very interesting because it is the best inflation annuity on the planet. And you would think that the government, I know I'm hoping here, would do a better job because of the misinformation that's out there. That's the reason I wanted to have you on, because when you started the first sentence of your article about the bonus retirees get from waiting to claim Social Security income benefits increases in 2 steps, I'm guaranteeing you that 98% of the people don't know what those 2 steps are. So tell them those 2 steps.
Yeah, so that was the main point of the article, which of course we haven't gotten to yet, because I could talk forever about this topic.
And we're going to talk a long time today.
And by the way, Stan, the government actually listened. So a lot of people have been saying for a while that the information on delayed claiming was not in the best interest of citizens. And so they've actually made some important changes to their website. I think they deserve some credit. They've done a really good job of improving it. Now, that said, the formula for figuring out how much more income you get every year from delayed claiming, that formula was put together in the early 1980s. And the formula was meant to make it what's known as actuarially fair. So if it's actuarially fair, that's a hard thing to say, then the present value of what you give up by waiting a year should be equal to the present value of what you can expect to get in increased benefit payments. So of course, if you increase the income of someone from 62 to 63, at age 63, the government expects you to get a lot more payments over the course of your lifetime. So the jump up in the bonus that you get for delayed claiming is only 5% per year. But it goes up to 6 2/3% once you hit age 64. So after your 64th birthday, all of a sudden, every month that you delay, you get that 6 2/3% per year increase. And then after age 67, if for someone who was born in 1960 and has full retirement age of 67 in 2022, for them, it goes up by 8% every year between 67 and 68. And if those rules were created back in the early 1980s with a different mortality table than exists in the United States right now, which means that people are now living longer than they did in the early 1980s, and especially higher income folks. So if you are a healthy, higher income American, you receive a significant benefit in the present value of those increased income payments that you get from delaying Social Security. But the bonus that you get is highest at each one of those steps, where that benefit of claiming goes up by 6 2/3% after age 64 and by 8% after age 67. And there is this belief that you should at least wait till your full retirement age, for good reason, to age 67, because if you don't, then you get taxed on your earnings. If you're making money outside of Social Security, it's a terrible deal to take it before full retirement age. But if you wait an additional year, that bonus that you get from waiting from 67 to 68 is actually the most generous bonus from delayed claiming. In fact, if you look, for example, for an average man, the bonus from waiting between 69 and 70 is actually not that big. These bonuses, by the way, are larger for women. And again, if you have a couple where the male is the higher earning spouse, then that surviving spouse can also expect to get that higher income payment. So don't just base it on whether it's a man or a woman. If you're a single woman, you're going to get a big bonus, especially if you're healthy, from delayed claiming. Now, that bonus is positive, Stan, and if you buy an annuity, you don't necessarily expect the present value to be equal to the amount of income payments that you're going to get in the future, because the insurance company has to make a little bit of profit to be able to provide that guarantee of a lifetime income, where the government is actually paying you to buy an annuity if you delay claiming Social Security. So it is kind of the opposite of buying a private annuity, in the sense that the government is giving you something for nothing. And to not take that something for nothing if you're a healthy retiree. Now, one of the forms of resistance that I hear is, well, Social Security is going to go bankrupt. Now, let's take a moment and talk about what that means. It means that sometime a little over 10 years from now, Social Security is going to have to cut benefits if they make no changes in the Social Security system. What politician is going to get reelected if they simply allow Social Security to be cut by 20%? None. I mean, there's zero political chance that that's going to happen. So what is going to happen? Well, most people agree that it's probably going to be some combination of increases in payroll taxes. So those who are working are going to have to pay a little bit more. Those who have higher incomes are going to start paying more for Social Security. There is an income limit on how much people pay for Social Security. That's probably going to get increased. I don't see any way around it at this point. And probably some of those inflation adjustments that people get every year are probably going to be reduced. But even if the worst case scenario happens, it still makes economic sense to delay claiming Social Security right now, given how expensive safe inflation-protected income from the government is, and given the fact that a lot of higher income Americans are living longer than they ever have.
Yeah, I found that last statement that you said, and it was kind of at the end of your article, talking about, just people that make more money, and people that are rich. And I know a lot of my listeners are what's considered categorically rich, but they don't think they're rich. I always tell people, oh, by the way, you're the evil rich. And they're like, no, there's no way. Yeah, you are. Is there like a income level or asset level that you look at from the standpoint of people living longer, et cetera? I mean,
if you look at the data, you see that those who are in the top 10th percentile of income, Social Security earnings. And what is the top 10th percentile? Well, probably people who on average make above $80,000 or $90,000 a year. But that doesn't sound rich, but it's the reality.
It is.
those are the people who have gained the most in terms of longevity over the last couple of decades, as much as 5 years for men. Now, men have actually made the biggest gains in longevity because they're not doing as many stupid things as they did back in the 1960s and 1970s. They're not smoking as much. They're exercising more. They're actually taking care of themselves, which means that they've got more years in retirement, which means that that benefit from delayed claiming is going to be greater for them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that I find that interesting because that also leads into if they happen to means test Social Security in the future, how are they going to do that? Now, there's arguments that they already do that, but I'm talking about, really kind of wiping out some people at the higher level that don't really need the income, even though they've paid in. Do you have any insight into that? Because I hear that a lot from people that are my clients or people that call me that are thinking about becoming clients. They're worried about that. They're worried about being cut out, even though they've scrimped and saved and now they're at these asset levels that somebody in the government might in the future deem them rich enough to be means tested out.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think that we're probably going to see increasing means testing among retirees. The government has some revenue issues that's going to have to get worked out in the future somehow. I don't see it happening. I don't see taxes going up for Social Security recipients. We've already seen some increase in costs for Medicare recipients who have higher incomes. It's also a good argument to pay close attention to how much taxable income you're generating in retirement. In other words, paying attention to taking advantage of Roth conversions when you can. And that's actually another benefit of delaying Social Security, is that you can start pulling money out of your qualified retirement accounts, like your IRAs, what were originally your 401ks. You can bridge your spending by pulling money out of that account, where you're forced to, after required minimum distributions start kicking in, you're forced to take money out of that account. You have to pay income taxes on it. And if means testing becomes a bigger issue, then you're kind of locked in. And if you look at the way those RMD rules work, the amount of money that you're pulling out, actually, you could keep pushing yourself into a higher income tax bracket to the point where by the time you reach your late 80s, you're actually in a higher bracket than you were at age 72. That's a source of risk. And one way to reduce that source of risk is by changing the account allocation that you have to reduce tax risk. So if you've got money in a Roth account, you can pull money out, no income taxes. You can have greater control over the amount of taxable income you generate. And this is probably a good point to also, or a good time to also point out that if you buy a non-qualified annuity, in other words, if you have money sitting in a taxable account, so you've got money sitting in a checking account or a money market account, or even in an investment account, and you buy a lifetime income with taxable dollars, only a portion of that income is actually subject to income taxation because of what's known as an exclusion ratio. So if you buy one, it may be that only a quarter of it is actually, especially in a low interest rate environment, a smaller percentage of your payment is subject to taxation, because that's the percentage that's considered to be interest. And that can actually be a very, it's a tax advantage that a lot of people don't really talk about, including the deferral benefit that you get from it until you turn the income on. But it's a way of controlling taxes in retirement as well.
In Stan speak, exclusion ratio means you're getting any type of lifetime income or income from an annuity is a combination of return of principal plus interest. In a non-IRA account, you're not going to pay taxes on the principal, you're going to pay taxes on the interest, which i.e. means exclusion ratio. That's what Michael was talking about. I think one of the things that jumped out at me, and I did not know this, and maybe I should, was that the Social Security has its own mortality tables that are probably different and unique from life insurance. Is that true? And explain why that's important.
It's important because a lot of these formulas, like the benefit that you receive from delayed claiming, are partially dependent on what Social Security estimates is a fair amount of extra income to give you if you delay claiming. And the Social Security average, I mean, that's everybody. So, you've seen your fellow Americans. The average American is perhaps different than you. I don't want to, it's if you are the kind of person who makes sure that they exercise a certain number of times per week, who goes to Whole Foods, who takes care of themselves physically, you're in a different, what's known as a mortality pool. And that mortality pool on average is going to live longer than the average American, and by quite a big difference. So when an insurance company is pricing an annuity, they're using the pool of people who actually buy annuities, who tend to live longer than the average American.
Got it.
So anytime you can join a mortality pool, and the same thing exists with pension, Stan. So if you work for an employer and the pension income is based on all employees, and you just happen to be healthier than your average worker at that company, then you actually receive more expected value from the pension than someone who is a lower income, less healthy worker who is going to not live as long in retirement. It's actually kind of a regressive policy of pension. But pay attention to the mortality pool that you're part of, because sometimes you can get an extra bonus.
That's very, very good. And so to sum that one up, not only is Social Security the best inflation annuity on the planet, it also has the most favorable actuarial tables for most listeners to a podcast like this, which, oh, by the way, Michael, is one of the fastest growing financial podcasts in the country, because we have people like you on it. And I really want to thank you for that. I want you to kind of get in the weeds a little bit, because part of the article I found fascinating when you were talking about the actual fair value of delayed claiming. And you went into tips and you went into all kinds of things. You gave a pretty good example of a 62-year-old who delays claiming. I think you did that earlier in the podcast, but can you go into the weeds of how the higher income payments in the future are discounted, all that smart guy stuff? I need you to do that and explain it to the listeners.
So everybody who is part of a mortality pool. I mean, the way that actuaries think about human beings is that, you can look at a table, and on average, I can tell you that there's a 50% chance that if you're a healthy male and you're age 62, there's a 50% chance you're going to live to the age of 88. Mm-hmm. And I know that around that age, there is a distribution of deaths, and the longer you live, the less likely it is that you're going to make it to your next birthday. So beyond age 88 for a male, the probability of surviving to age 89 goes down. Probability of surviving to age 90 is a little bit lower than that. So we can actually look at one of these mortality tables to estimate how many expected income payments the company or the government will have to pay you in the future. Now, you can flip that around, and if you're an individual, you can say, all right, how much on average am I going to receive when I buy an annuity or delay Social Security? How much on average am I going to receive over the course of my lifetime? And to do that, all you have to do is take the present value of that payment. Say the payment is going to occur at the age of 75. You multiply that by the probability that you're going to be alive to receive that payment. And that is the present value of that payment to you today. So I spend a lot of my days, I know David Blanchett, he is the whiz when it comes to this stuff. Yeah, so he and I will spend a lot of time looking at spreadsheets. And this paper came because we wrote a paper on Social Security claiming, and it was a little idiosyncrasy that I noticed about these steps in retirement. But what we were doing is constantly trying to price out annuities by looking at mortality tables, looking at the present value. Well, the other element that you have to consider is, what is the value of an income payment in 20 years? So in other words, if I were to buy a bond today, a corporate bond or a treasury bond, and it matured in 20 years, how much would I have to pay for that today? In a low interest rate environment, I'm gonna have to pay $800 to get $1,000 in 20 years. Mm-hmm. In a high interest rate environment, I may only have to pay $400 to get $1,000 in 20 years. But we have to deal with the reality of the low interest rate environment that we live in. So we discount at a lower rate. And by the way, anybody who's using stocks to compare the present value of future guaranteed income is insane.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for that.
that I see all the time. And I'll tell you, this is the kind of stuff that absolutely drives economists crazy. I mean, bring this up with Bob Merton and he will, you get him started, Nobel Prize winning economist Bob Merton.
Sure.
And the reality is that there is no guaranteed return on a stock. On average, stocks have done well historically, but everybody who retires today is stuck with whatever sequence of stock returns they get over the next 20 years. And the way to think about stock returns is not that they're always going to be 10%. It's that there is going to be a variation in future returns. And it may be that stock returns over the next 20 years are 10%, but it's probably, a 1 in 100 chance that they're going to be exactly 10%. There's a big chance that they're going to be something else. And nobody knows in advance what that something else is. And stocks are really, well, at least they were really expensive as of a couple of weeks ago. They're still pretty expensive. And in periods where stocks have been this expensive, the 10-year returns are actually not too much more than the yield that people are getting on bonds right now. So this idea that no, don't delay Social Security, just take that $20,000 and invest it, and you're going to get more money than if you delayed Social Security. No, there's no guarantee of that. On average, there is what's known as a equity risk premium, and that's what the economists call it, which is basically like historically stocks have on average had a higher return than bonds, but you don't know if you're going to be lucky or unlucky over the next 20 years. There's always a chance that you're not going to get lucky. And you don't want to base your lifestyle in 20 years on luck of the markets. And that's why I always say that everybody should have portions of their retirement portfolio invested in risky assets, because on average, they do have a higher return, especially over longer holding periods. But you have to have a base of income to fund your inflexible expenses, something that we talked about last time. You have to have a base of income. And that should not be dependent on the performance you get in the stock market. So insulate a portion of your income from stock market volatility. And not only is that mathematically the right thing to do, it's also psychologically the right thing to do. I mean, I don't have to worry about Russia invading Ukraine and the impact that that's going to have on my lifestyle next month. A lot of people are facing that, who have had such great luck over the last decade, especially if they really have been participating in financial markets over the last decade in preparation for retirement. They've gotten, I think, accustomed to this idea that the market only goes up. But, that, as we know, that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, what drives me crazy when I talk to people and they'll say, well, I could do better investing my money than this guaranteed lifetime income stream. I'm like, hey, player, that's apples and oranges. Okay, we're talking about two separate things. You can't make that correlation. But the problem with that is, in an article a few years back, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't know if I get his name right from a pronunciation standpoint, Michael Kitces.
Yep.
Is kind of smart guy in the room for advisors, and he has advisory service. And he wrote an article just slamming QLAC, saying, this is not a good investment. You historically, you could do better, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what are you even talking about? I mean, to make that correlation and to say, well, you should just keep your money in stocks, that's insanity. And I think it correlates to what you just said about, stocks are great, but they not all the time. And you can't make that correlation. Okay, well, I'm not going to buy QLAC because I know historically I'm going to do better in the market. And I think that, the Michael Kitceses of the world, who I totally respect, he's a very smart guy, but people read his stuff and they believe his stuff, which is scary when he talks about that.
Yeah, I think the reframing that needs to happen is that all retirees have a portion of their investments in stocks and a portion of their investments in bonds.
Agreed.
And if you're going to buy a QLAC, that's part of the bond portion of your portfolio. Essentially, what you're saying is that instead of investing in bonds, I'm going to invest in bonds through an insurance company and receive a lifetime income guarantee that's going to begin later on in retirement to ensure that if I don't get lucky with the rest of my investments, I'm going to have an income for the rest of my life that begins maybe at the age of 80 or 85. And to compare stuff that should be from the bond portion of your portfolio to the overall performance of the portfolio isn't the right way to do it. the insurance company is not investing in stocks. You're
No.
investing in bonds anyway. Hand the
Mhm.
money over to the insurance company. They'll probably do a better and cheaper job of investing in bonds than you can, and they
Mhm.
will provide you with that lifetime income guarantee because they will pool that longevity risk with other retirees like you. You essentially become part of a long life income club.
Well said. I know we've kind of gotten off the Social Security topic. Is there anything else that you want to add to that? Because I want to pivot a little bit to a couple of the things, but you've hammered away pretty well at the Social Security issue from the claiming standpoint. Anything else?
This is another point that I think retirees don't think enough about, is that you have a balance sheet at retirement. And that balance sheet is what funds your lifestyle, and it funds what you pass on after you die. And your pension, your Social Security is absolutely part of that balance sheet. And so when we look at how much you can spend in retirement, we're looking at the value of your Social Security. Now, the value of Social Security is big. For a lot of people, it can be maybe $700,000 or $800,000 today, especially if you've delayed claiming. Think of that as simply part of the resources that you have available to fund the lifestyle that you want to live. Someone who has a pension has a pot of money which represents the expected amount that you're going to receive from that pension over time. And that, again, that's in a bond-like asset. Social Security is a bond-like asset. If you
Mhm.
have more, and annuities are a bond-like asset, if you have more of those assets, you can actually take more risk with the remainder of your portfolio because you have a big chunk of your portfolio tied up in safe investments. So consider those claims, those guaranteed income sources to be part of your retirement portfolio. That will allow you to make smarter decisions about how you invest.
Got a great story on that. My parents, who are college basketball coaches, which is a hellish way to grow up, both of them were, but they retired and they ended up becoming elementary school teachers in the North Carolina public school system. And they retired and they had this pension, and they never understood investments and grew up poor mill worker families in North Carolina. And I remember sitting with them when they turned on their pension, and they said, "Well, we just don't have any money, blah blah blah." I said, "Let me run the number for you and show you what it would take find an immediate annuity to create the lifetime income stream for both of you, joint life only, which is what they're getting." It was over $1 million, and my dad, up to the day he passed away, wouldn't believe me on that. No, I just don't believe that. I'm like, well, then where's the money coming from? But the point is, you're right about these pensions. I mean, you don't you don't look at it as part of your net worth, obviously, because it's not transferable to kids, et cetera. But it is part of that income floor. And for people that are fortunate enough to have a pension, you need to run that number. It's pretty good. So, for people that have been school teachers, thank you for that. You're getting rewarded. I wanted to pivot a couple. You wrote another article on inflation. Before we get to that, I would like, you're not a prognosticator, but I'm dying to get into your brain to see what you think about the proposed alleged Fed rate hikes that might happen, should happen, plan to happen. What do you think is going to happen?
First of all, nobody knows. And
Of
I
course.
hate prognosticators in general
Well, that's the
because,
reason I framed it so that we're not doing that. I just want in your brain a little bit because I know you're thinking about it.
I think the chances change from day to day, but today it seems not quite as likely that rates are going to rise because there is a fear, markets are
Yeah.
falling. There's a fear that the
Yeah.
Fed is going to stifle economic growth if they raise rates right now in the face of a potential global conflict. So who knows? And Stan, this is a great opportunity to say, the time that you spent listening to prognosticators in general on TV, I was just noticing that Jim Cramer,
Yeah.
was recommending to buy the dip in the stock market a couple days ago, and everybody
Yeah.
was saying that
Super.
there is this tremendous predictive ability that people like he have of predicting exactly the wrong thing. And a lot of people have a really terrible track record, yet we still listen to them. And if they were actually this good at predicting what's going to happen, they should start their own hedge
Yeah,
fund and
they
not
would
tell
never
anybody
talk
about
to
it.
anybody. And what I was hoping you were going to give an answer similar to the one you gave, which was it's day to day, and it looks like it changed today. So,
It did.
which is a great answer because I have people on the podcast that are economists or big time advisors, and they all think this is going to happen. Jeremy Siegel said this, and Byron Wien said this, and things are so fluid that you really don't know. So my point is, with everyone, you can't time it. You can't time annuity purchases, which isn't a sales pitch. It's just the way it is, which leads me into an article you recently wrote about inflation. And inflation is personal for everybody, as you know, Michael. It affects people differently. Since my kids are out of the home and out of college, I'm not buying as much milk and taking them to dance classes, so I'm not driving as much. But not only are people going to get inflation increases this year, I'm assuming you're thinking they're going to get it next year with Social Security as well.
I think definitely. And I think actually for Social Security recipients, they're going to get more, maybe more than they should.
Hold on. Wait a minute. What? Are you running for office? No. What was that again?
Obviously not.
Oh, yeah, I'm not voting for you. No, I'm kidding. Explain.
So a lot of people who are, essentially what's happened post-pandemic, if you can say that we're post-pandemic, but as a lot more people started returning to work, of course, that increased demand for cars and gasoline. We've also seen supply issues, increasing prices of certain types of goods. Mm-hmm. Like red meat has gone up. I've termed this manflation because cars and gas and red meat have gone up. But for most retirees, it really hasn't been quite as serious. Right. If you actually look at healthcare, it's been totally flat. Pharmaceuticals have been totally flat. Maybe red meat goes up, but they can substitute poultry, which didn't even go up by 10%. Right. There's things seniors can do to be a little bit more flexible, and especially if transportation expenses are driving that increase in inflation, then you might actually get an improvement in your standard of living if your Social Security goes up by 7%, because your overall expenses, especially if a lot of people own their own house, a lot of people have property taxes that get limited after a certain age. For them, their inflation hasn't gone up. And by the way, when you're planning for retirement, pay attention to what percentage of your expenses are subject to increases in inflation and what are what we call stable nominal expenses. So if you have a mortgage, if you have a fixed rate mortgage, that's a stable nominal expense. If you live in a place that caps your property taxes, that's pretty much a stable nominal expense. But obviously food, that's subject to a certain amount of inflation. Travel costs may be subject to a certain amount of inflation. Everybody has a different rate of inflation for the stuff that they buy, but that's what you really need to pay attention to. And I think in general, for most retirees, inflation hasn't been as serious an issue for them as it has been for, say, younger working Americans who have to drive to work, have to buy a car. For them, it was a little bit more serious.
Yeah, it seems like always this affects the poor more than it affects, everyone else, which is sad, but it's reality. And, people, that's the common question that people ask me when they get me on the phone. Hey, Stan, what do you think about inflation? And my question back to them is, tell me about you. Tell me about how it's affecting you. Is it affecting you? Do you have enough income going in? Yeah. Do you have enough money in the bank? Yeah. I mean, so I think it's personal. I think that once again, cable news and the news media, they start pounding the table, and then people get, upset about something they might not need to get upset about. But there are people that are planning, et cetera. In the past, there were annuities that had what's called CPIU, Consumer Price Index for Urban Consumer, attachments to the income stream, but those are no longer. And they haven't been around for a few years. Maybe that'll come back in the future. But just remember, if you want lifetime income stream and an increase to that lifetime income stream, annuity companies don't give that away. They significantly lower that initial payment as compared to the exact same annuity without that cost of living adjustment increase. So just put in the back of your head, you already own the best inflation annuity on the planet. And Michael's predicting even a greater increase next year as well. If they're going to go by the formula, it has to, especially if gas pops up like it's looking like it's popping up.
Right. At this point, I think it's important to talk about how retirees spend money. And we we know from the data that spending tends to be the highest the first 10 years of retirement. So I tend to worry a little bit less about having nominal annuity payments because Social Security is going to rise with inflation. You may want to ensure that part of your expenses are covered, but part of your expenses are going to be nominal anyway. So cover those expenses using a nominal, not inflation protected annuity. You already have a big base of inflation protected income, especially if you delay claiming Social Security. And in general, what's going to happen is your spending in after inflation terms is going to decline as you get older in retirement. So you're not going on as many vacations when you're 80 as you did when you were 70. And health expenses rise later on in life, but by that time, if you have significant health expenses, you're not doing much else. So spending does not tend to continue to rise even in those older ages when you have higher medical expenses. Now, I often see a QLAC as a form of inflation protection because you can buy an income that's going to pop up. But, maybe you buy one that starts at 80, you buy another one that starts at 85.
Right.
All of a sudden, you've got an inflation protected income from Social Security. You've created a nominal income through an income annuity, and then you can actually buy an additional source of income that pops up later on in life. And I'm a big fan of those because I think I don't want to be managing a pot of money to provide income when I'm 95. I'm not going to be as capable as I was when I was 75. So automating your income later in life makes sense. Another reason why you and I are fans of QLACs.
Well, yeah, just transferring the risk for lifetime income, and you can start it at future dates. You can ladder the purchase, you can ladder the start date, you can ladder both. You can time those purchases. You just can't time the exact right time to buy an annuity. And believe me, annuity companies are asking the questions that you as the consumer are asking. Should I hold on to it, or should I buy it later, or should I defer it? They're pricing it so it's not a perfect decision on your behalf. Getting back to just what you were talking about with retirees, et cetera. Steve Parrish calls it, and I don't know if it's unique to him, but when he said it, I loved it. It's, your go-go, slow-go, no-go. That's your three phases of retirement. Your go-go, and that's what you talked about the first 10 years, you're going to spend it. Slow go is that cognitive decline that all of us are going to have. Maybe Michael won't have that because his brain's firing on all 12 cylinders, but the rest of us are going to have it. And then there's no go, and that's what he was talking about, which at the kind of the end of life time period, you're not going to spend as much money because you're not going to be going out and you're not as mobile, et cetera. I think that people just need to look at all of this, whether it's retirement, buying annuities, looking at inflation. It's personal. It's personal and customizable to you. Don't group yourself into what the person on Fox, CNN, or MSNBC, Fox Business, or CNBC said. It's about your situation. And I would say tune all of that out if you can, for sure. But inflation is going to be with us. It's not, as Janet Yellen said, transitory. Do you believe that? I know.
I don't know. Who knows? Stan, none of us know, frankly. We'll see how it all plays out.
I guess that's the definition of transitory. What's your definition of transitory? Transitory means 2 years. Yeah, it could be gone in 2 years. Sure. If transitory is 6 months in your mind, no, it's not going to be gone in 6 months, in my opinion, just because of just kind of what's happening. But it is a weird world when I'm looking at the gas prices right now. I'm glad I don't drive, but I do fly a lot. But I mean, my heart goes out to people that have to commute and do that for a living. And obviously it's going to get passed on to us via higher prices at the grocery store, et cetera.
Right.
What are you working on right now other than your typical digging into charts and things like that? What's piquing your interest right now, Michael?
One of the things that I have been giving a lot of thought to is this idea of not annuitizing with an investment portfolio, and what are the consequences of not annuitizing
Sure.
or at least a portion of your income in retirement. If you, there's a lot of thought. People who use these Monte Carlo analyses, which I'm a big fan of Monte Carlo. I think it tells you some.
And
very
explain to the
things.
people that aren't familiar with that as a software. They know the race over there. Tell them what Monte Carlo is.
I spend so much time with this stuff that I forget that people don't know it. So
yeah,
what is a Monte Carlo analysis? A Monte Carlo analysis it's pretty straightforward. So let's say that you start out retirement with $1 million and you decide that you want to spend $40,000 per year in retirement from that $1 million portfolio. And let's say you assume that you invest 60% of the portfolio in stocks and 40% of the portfolio in bonds. Now, none of us know what the returns on stocks or bonds are going to be next year. We do know that bonds are probably going to be less volatile. Stocks are going to be more volatile. And that means that there is a probability that stocks could go up by 20%. There's a probability they could go down by 20%. We don't know in advance what's going to happen. So what we do is we simulate a sequence of returns over the course of a lifetime for thousands of retirees. It's not a real retiree, it's a fake retiree, but we simulate what they would go through if they experienced this sequence of return. So say retiree A has a 40% return the first year in retirement. Then now they went from $1 million to $1.4 million. They're going to be still withdrawing $40,000 a year. They have a much better chance of being able to do that over the course of their lifetime. Now, let's say you're an unlucky retiree. You started out with $1 million, you have negative 30% your first year, something like 2008 happens. All of a sudden, you go from, maybe a 90% chance that you can make that lifestyle, that you can continue to spend $40,000 a year. Now, all of a sudden, you're down to 60%. And that, then what? Then you have to cut back. And that is one of the things that I think a lot about is what is the value of buying some sort of portfolio protection? So this is one of these areas, Stan, that I think you and I don't wade into all that often. But this is the idea that a institution, you can go to an insurance company and they can buy financial options that do really well if the market does poorly. And they will tell you, it's fine if you withdraw $40,000 or $50,000 or $45,000 from $1 million portfolio that's invested in stocks and bonds. And if you run out, we'll be on the hook to continue that $45,000 income as long as you live. Now, no financial advisor will provide you with that guarantee. They'll say, well, you can follow the 4% rule and it's worked historically. But if you ask them, well, what if I live to age 85 and I got unlucky and the markets do really bad and I run out, are you going to pick up the tab? And they will say, well, no, I would never take that sort of a liability. Well, there are people who will take that liability, but they will charge you for it because they have to buy these financial options to protect against that potential downside. And so they will guarantee that you will continue to receive an income if you run out by the age of 85. So there is this concept of a contingent deferred annuity.
Yeah, the CDAs. Yeah, they're out there, but they're just not good, in my opinion.
Well, they're out there, and whether they're good or not depends on the cost of hedging that risk. And it's expensive.
And the rules underlying. There's some rules underlying.
You have to understand the rules. But I think that if you're, there's really two approaches to annuitization. One is you buy that floor of income using bond investments. The other, you have a portfolio, and then you add protection to that portfolio by maybe withdrawing, 1.5% per year to pay for those expenses of providing that lifetime income guarantee.
Right.
And it's a different philosophy on annuitization, but it's one that fascinates me because I think it is a different approach to, I think it's clearer for people to think in terms of, I'm going to buy a base of income with the bond portion of my portfolio. I'm going to add that to Social Security. I know I'm always going to have that amount no matter how long I live. But there's a separate annuitization feature, which is this sort of lifetime income feature, which we're spending some more time studying it, and it can be relatively efficient. And it's probably something that we have to devote an entire episode to sometime, because it is a completely different philosophy on an annuitization than the one I normally present. But it's one that's it's legitimate and it's worth thinking about.
I would love to do that on the next time we get together, because I simplify that thought into, I call it, and I've written about it in my books, deferred SPIA, which you don't annuitize, and then you annuitize at the exact time you need income to start, keeping your powder dry along the way. Now, the annuity gods look down upon me and say, please stop, Stan, because we're not getting sales. And I tell the annuity gods, I'm like, it doesn't matter what you say, because for a lot of people, defer to SPIA makes sense. And a lot of people that I feel are managing their portfolio, or someone's doing a good job with what they're doing, is like, let's wait until the exact time and then pull the trigger then. But with that being said, that's a very simplistic way. I do think that annuity companies, looking at the demographic tidal wave of baby boomers retiring and looking for guarantees, and also looking for unique guarantees that allow them to have their cake and eat it too, I think you're going to see products and strategies and offerings that are going to do what you just said, which is provide that lifetime income strategy while allowing you to continue with kind of what you're doing. And they're called contingent deferred annuities, but I think in the future they're going to be better, better than what's out there, because it's not been presented really well. And masters of the universe stock portfolio people don't even want to go there because they think they can manage it and they can do it themselves. But I think more and more baby boomers are pounding the table and saying, no, we want guarantees too. And I think that's going to be, as soon as you write the paper or what you want to talk about it, definitely let's do that. We're coming up on the kind of the end of this segment for this time. As I always do, Michael, there's a mic drop moment that I hand to you to say something really unbelievably intellectual to the listeners, so that they can walk away and go, man, that was great. So it's a mic drop. It's your balls in your court. Go.
And Stan, I think we have to end it by saying that the best way to stick it to the government is by delaying your Social Security, not taking it early. It's something I want everybody to remember it, because I see it over and over again.
That's Michael Finke. Stick it to the government the right way, in your favor. And that's definitely a t-shirt material. And I want to thank Michael for being on, as always. It's every time we do this, I mean, my emails and messages light up, because they're like, ask him this next time, ask him that. I'm not that organized. We just kind of freeform this thing. Michael, it's like Michael and I sitting around just talking with a cup of coffee. But I want to thank everyone for joining us on all the major podcast platforms, and also on the Fun with Annuities YouTube channel. My name is Stan, the Annuity Man. Yes, this is one of the fastest growing podcasts on the planet, if you can believe that. Fun with Annuities. And I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to Fun with Annuities. Please hit the subscribe button and make sure to go to my site at theannuityman.com, where you can run your own SPIA, DIA, and QLAC quotes and see a live feed of the best MIGA fixed rates in the country, and even get indexed and income rider quotes as well. You can also sign up for my 6 annuity owner's manual books, and I'll ship them for free and under no obligation. I also encourage you to schedule a one-on-one call with me, Stan the Annuity Man, so we can have a full discussion of your specific situation. It will be the best brutally factual and truthful advice you will ever get, and that's one guarantee you should definitely take advantage of. So join me next time for the #1 annuity podcast on the planet, Fun with Annuities.